Now go from Washington to here in Berlin. Our colleague Charlotte Potts is standing by at probably the biggest election party here in the city. Charlotte.
Yeah, hi Brent. It's after 3 p.m. here and people are still here. It's pretty crowded still. This election has people on the edge of their seats. As the votes are slowly starting to be counted, I feel like the situation, the atmosphere is getting a little more tense. People here definitely want to see, at least from all the people that I've talked to, a President Clinton in the White House. I have a panel with me now, all Americans, 3 Americans, starting here to my left with Tyson Barker. He's a former State Department official appointed by Obama. We have here Stephen Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, based in New York, and Christina Gonzalez. She's a former Bosch fellow, and she currently lives and works in Berlin. I think one question that at least is in everybody's mind here in Germany and in Europe is what is at stake in this election?
Well, I mean, what's at stake is basically all the fundamentals of this relationship that we've built since the end of the Cold War. I mean, we're talking
drastic.
about, yes, I mean, as drastic as it may seem, that's really what's on the table here. We're talking about bringing into question a lot of the tenets of liberal democracy, free trade, open relationships, alliances, beliefs in international organizations have all been made political issues in this election. And this is what the American people are deciding on. Do we want to continue with that liberal, democratic, open international system that we were the architects of? Or do we want to change the direction?
Mr. Sokol, can you give us a little bit of an outlook? What kind of presidency Trump would have? What kind of foreign policy would he lead?
It's very difficult for us to guess exactly what a President Trump would look like, what a President Trump's policies would look like, and particularly what a Trump foreign policy would look like. There are a few indicators. I think everybody's pretty clear that America is a little bit more inward-looking under a President Trump. Talk about a wall going up with Mexico, protectionism, and as we just heard, not necessarily a country that's as open to free trade as the United States has traditionally been. How much is really going to change, though, remains to be seen. And I think regardless of who wins the election, one of the things for observers to be watching is who are the people who are on short lists for cabinet positions and for key positions in government. To watch, for example, who's going to be the Secretary of State or who's the US Trade Representative. Those give some good ideas as to who some of the advisors will be who are close to the president. Trump is not really a known quantity in foreign policy issues.
Yeah, nobody here in Germany, no politician has ever met him.
That's right.
We've heard, yeah.
And so Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, particularly after her service as the Secretary of State, is much more of a known quantity. And yet there too, we'll have to see what a President Clinton does versus what the rhetoric of a candidate Clinton in the general election campaign has been, let alone in the primaries. And so I think in both cases, we'll see some developments when they're faced with the realities of governing.
Right, but there is a lot on the line tonight, we agree on that.
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez, you told me before you are a Republican, but you're also disappointed by your party. It looks pretty shattered right now. What's kind of the outlook there? What's the future? What is your take on your party tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general for many months now, throughout the presidential campaign, the nomination process, there's no doubt that the Republican Party has a lot of separate factions, that if it wants to be a sustainable party coming forward, there has to be a way to kind of rebuild the pieces that existed before, but also very important is to bring in new people into the party going forward. And I think this is where Donald Trump has really set the party backwards in terms of reaching out to groups that are really necessary now in America in order to govern with a majority, whether that being minorities, Hispanics, women, a lot of people that the GOP tried so hard to reach out to after the 2012 election, I fear that now we've kind of taken a step back on that front, and it's going to take a while to put that back together, but I'm optimistic that it can happen with positive messaging and the right leadership, and so we'll see what happens going forward after today.
Optimistic, yeah.
One of the things that this election campaign has brought out is deep divisions within the country. And I think one sees that most clearly within the Republican Party, where there are a lot of Republicans who cannot bring themselves to vote for the candidate that's been put forward by their party, but who also can't necessarily bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton. And so it starts with a Tea Party movement within the Republican Party, but then a real split between moderate Republicans and those who are Trump supporters.
Right, and no matter who wins tonight, he or she will face a very divided country. Where is all this frustration coming from?
I mean, the frustration is coming from a base of the country which is shrinking. That's the white working class, ethnic whites, former union members, that frankly have gone from being Democrats to Reagan Democrats to being non-voters. And one thing that we shouldn't lose when we're looking at the election, particularly now, at this moment where everything seems to be critically close, is that voter turnout really matters. You know, in the United States, the voting proportion and turnout is around between 54 and 58%. That means just getting 2% more of your base to turn out can turn an election on its head. What Trump has been able to do is energize a particular part of the population that has not been engaged in the past. And the question that we're going to answer tonight is, has he energized that particular group of non-voters more than Hillary Clinton has energized Latinos, women, millennials on the other side?
Right, millennials, that's a good point. I mean, it looks like millennial turnout is actually not that high, right?
I mean, historically speaking, young voters don't turn out to the polls in the numbers that the generations that come after them do. So this is something that I don't think is necessarily unique to this election, but it is crucial because millennials now represent the largest voting bloc in America when it comes to generations. So I think for Hillary Clinton especially, this is important to generate that millennial enthusiasm, because I've seen certain polls, if they turn out, she can win, and if they don't turn out, she could lose. But there are a lot of them who feel, quite frankly, disappointed by the fact that she isn't the ideal candidate for a number of different reasons. The voter enthusiasm that they saw in terms of Bernie Sanders and really energizing the progressive side of the base didn't really translate necessarily into Clinton votes. If anything, it might be more anti-Trump votes that you'll see from millennials turning out to vote for Clinton, if anything.
One thing I want to get back to very briefly, an outlook into the future. How is the next president going to overcome that divide that you've seen, the hostile rhetoric that we've seen, the populism rising? How can they overcome it?
I think one of the things that one has to remember is that neither of these candidates is very popular. And so I think good advice for the next president would be to go to some of the regions where they know that they did not win and talk to the public and say, I understand your concerns. And I, as Hillary Clinton has been saying, want to be a president for everybody, including those that didn't vote for me. I think you're absolutely right, and this is the way the question is framed. The next president will inherit a very divided country. We're seeing it within the Republican Party. We even see divisions within the Democratic Party. I think with all the focus that's going to the Trump phenomena, one can't forget the Sanders phenomena, a polarization of politics in the United States. But as we're watching the votes come in, we're also seeing a divide between urban regions and more rural regions. We know that there are divisions over age, over race, over ethnicity, over religion, not to mention some of the class issues that have come up already.
Right.
And so there are these deep fissures within American society, and the next president is going to have to address that head on. And I happen to think that issues like education, training, how we prepare for the world of tomorrow become incredibly important for the next administration.
very briefly, what are your expectations tonight for tonight? Who's going to make it to the White House? I want to start with you.
I'm going to say a squeaker, but I'm going to say that Hillary Clinton still pulls it out with strong wins in Virginia and North Carolina and holding
optimist here, to
some
my left.
Obama states. Yes.
How about you, Ms. Gonzalez?
I would agree that Hillary Clinton will be our next president, but she will certainly face a partisan United States going forward.
Mr. Sokol?
My guess is also that Hillary
Wow.
Clinton will win. I think it will depend how much of a lead she has and how strong her presidency will be. What we haven't talked at all about are the down ballot races, and I have a sense that in the House and the Senate, there will still be a Republican majority.
Right. Thank you all so much for being here. I wish us all an exciting night, and now I give back to you guys at the studio.
All right, Charlotte, thank you so much. Well, polls have